Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhu eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Welcome back, Prabhus, to Srila Prabhupada, our Founder-Acarya. Today moving into the Prayojana section of our seminar. Having hopefully deepened our understanding of Prabhupada's position, his relationship with us as our Founder-Acarya, and deepened our commitment to serve his mission in the Abhideya portion. Now we're ready to move into tasting the fruit of our relationship based on loving, which is love. Prabhupada praying. Pure love for Srila Prabhupada. So having discovered that developing our service to our Founder-Acharya's mission is the key to developing an intimate relationship with him, we now face a very human challenge: performing our service cooperatively with his devotees. And what a challenge it is in this Kali Yuga. This is the age of non-cooperation, the age of quarrel, the age of dissension, the age of hypocrisy, the age of short lives, quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, always disturbed. So it was a stroke of genius and a stroke of undoubted realization that Srila Prabhupada made it the measure of our love for him that we would show that love by cooperating. So to love is to cooperate. And I chose the slide you're looking at, not for no reason. There in Srila Prabhupada and the finisher or Sanoshir, focal point of all the devotees' love and commitment and cooperation. It's either Vrindavan or Mayapur, I'm not sure which. And there he is in Vapu, but for the movement to continue, to fulfill the mandate of Mahaprabhu, every town and village his name would be sung. If ISKCON is to fulfill that as the main fulfiller in cooperation with others, then we need to keep our Founder-Acharya front and center as he is in this slide. So this slide, of course, is back in the day when you see mostly Americans in the slide, but especially as if you visit Mayapur nowadays, you see it's more like what Bhaktivinoda Thakur envisioned. People from all countries all over the world. So how much more is it urgent that we keep our Founder-Acharya's life, his teachings, his mood, his mission, his everlasting Vani front and center. So the first lesson in Prayojana naturally is then how to fulfill that cooperation request. Okay, so there's the slide. Now we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so there is Srila Prabhupada enjoying a light moment with his servant Srila Kirti Prabhu. And Srila Kirti's in his constitutional position there during Vapu Leela massaging Srila Prabhupada. As Srila put it, in his What is the Difficulty book, it was interesting. He couldn't see Prabhupada's expressions from where he was. He was always in back of Prabhupada. So it's kind of like Arjuna in back of Krishna. Bhishmadev was more fortunate, it says in the Bhagavatam, because he could see Parthasarathi from the front in all of his glory, facing front. So it's against this background that we're going to introduce the first slide. To love is to cooperate is the lesson, but first of all we have to back up and remind ourselves that love, first of all, is to render service. And this is why Srila Prabhupada, when he would translate bhakti, unlike some others, he would always translate it as devotional service, not just simply love, but in a very practical expression of love, devotional service. So there is Srila Kirti Prabhu, and he's massaging Srila Prabhupada at the manor, Bhaktivedanta Manor. This time we have an inside shot, Prabhupada's beautiful quarters, and I'm happy to say that they're just as well maintained as they were when Prabhupada was there. It's very encouraging to see that. So the quote I'm going to scroll in now on the slide, comes from another time and place when Srila Kirti was also with Prabhupada, but they had just landed in Los Angeles. Anyway, it was a big airport reception, and it was a typical thunderous oceanic tsunami kirtan reception, devotees chanting, dancing, laughing, crying. And Srila Kirti is with Srila Prabhupada, and he's rather new in the anecdote he tells in this particular case. And they get back to Prabhupada's quarters. I believe it was Los Angeles. They're setting up the rooms, and Srila Kirti is expressing dismay to Srila Prabhupada that he doesn't feel love the way his disciples do. He's always experiencing how the disciples, wherever Prabhupada goes, are just overwhelmed with love to see him. So he's expressing this dismay to Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhupada replies to Srila Kirti in his book. I'm not going to scroll the punchline yet, but Prabhupada says to Srila Kirti, "So do you like serving me?" "Oh yes, Prabhupada, I like serving you very much." "Then that is love. Everyone can do so many things, singing, dancing, jumping up and down, but you are actually doing something. Isn't this love?" "I guess so, Srila Prabhupada." And now Prabhupada says on the slide, "So you just do your service. That is all that is necessary. This is what love means, to do service." Okay. So love means to do service, but love also means to cooperate, and that's where it gets more challenging. In Kali Yuga, we just are so, we can be so stubborn and so pig-headed and so passionate and non-cooperative that it's not easy to serve cooperatively. So the next slide, love means also to cooperate. To set up the quote on this slide, I'm going to describe the srinario. And to love is to cooperate, that's the famous line. And so it was set up by Srila Prabhupada himself in his last year with us, when his health was failing. And they had tried to go to Rishikesh in the foothills of the Himalayas. It didn't work. So Prabhupada said it's time to return to Vrindavan. And he says the time has come to draft a will. He can sense that his Vapu Leela is winding down. The devotees can't conceive of it, but Prabhupada is saying that it's time to make a will. And Prabhupada says, to make a will, I want all the leaders present. So this is major, to say he wants all the leaders from all over the world to fly in, to be with Prabhupada in Vrindavan to make a will. So it was Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was serving as Prabhupada's secretary then, wanted to make sure that Prabhupada really wanted this because it was going to be a major endeavor. So the way it's described in the Lilamrita, Tamal Krishna wanted to double check to see that Prabhupada actually wanted all the GBC men from all over the world to come. It would be costly and demanding, so he wanted to be sure that Prabhupada really wanted it. When Srila Prabhupada assured him that he did, Tamal Krishna, who saw his service as responding to whatever Srila Prabhupada desired, also spoke in favor. And now here's the line that TKG said that set up Prabhupada for his famous quote. Because they love you, said Tamal Krishna, I am sure that they will all want to come and be with you. So here we go. Your love for me, said Srila Prabhupada, will be shown by how much you cooperate. Cooperate, literally, to work together. By how much you cooperate to keep this institution together after I am gone. So we at the Lilamrita team, I'm not sure who got that quote. It might have been Satsur Maharaj himself. Got that quote from Tamal Krishna Maharaj himself, who was there. And so we used it because he was there. He was an eyewitness, an ear witness, credible testimony. So we got that. Interestingly enough, maybe 10 years later, maybe 15 years later, when TKG compiled his diary, TKG's diary, he obviously went back to his notes, his diary, his journal, and he presented it in a slightly different way, essentially the same, but it's interesting, little different words. And here are the words from TKG's diary. Srila Prabhupada emphasized, quote, "Your love for me will be tested." I really like that, tested. "How after my departure you maintain this institution. We have glamour, and people are feeling our weight. This should be maintained." Now, by glamour, Prabhupada obviously doesn't mean Hollywood. He means popularity. People are starting to appreciate what we're doing. People are feeling our weight. In other words, there's some significance to this Hare Krishna movement. Prabhupada doesn't want that to diminish. So the key to that is like the bundle of sticks, staying together, and we'll get to that a little later, and working cooperatively. Okay, so there's a very clear message, directive, thesis, if you will. Cooperate. Now, at other times in his Leela, Prabhupada made it very, very clear that this was not going to be easy, and that we shouldn't expect it will be easy, because number one, it's Kali Yuga, and number two, there's something else going on, a reason why it's not easy. So here the next slide, we're going to introduce the antithesis, the antithesis of the cooperative spirit. Here it is. Okay. Don't expect utopia. And there is Srila Prabhupada making a very strong point there in the top slide. And there in the bottom slide, we have no less than Krishna and Balaram, the Supreme Personalities of Godhead. And then we have a pure devotee, Akrura, taking them away from Vrindavan, who is a Mukta Purush, pure devotee, liberated soul. And then we have a whole slew of pure devotees in the highest most intimate relationship with Krishna, conjugal rasa, the gopis, in severe conflict with Akrura. They almost look like the original occupiers, and we have this Occupy movement now all across America, right? So there they are. They're occupying space. They're trying to stop the proceedings here. So this "don't expect utopia" famously came up in a letter from Srila Prabhupada to our godbrother Atreya Rishi, a very qualified person in the world, had an MBA from Harvard in business administration. He's from Iran, and he was very much into organization, which Prabhupada appreciated. But he had a complaint to Srila Prabhupada. In 1972, he wrote Prabhupada complaining that the devotees were always fighting, and Atreya thought the root of that was because they were so impersonal. They were treating each other insensitively, impersonally. Now, Prabhupada could have granted that. He could have granted Atreya's point that we're dealing with a lot of, greenhorn devotees, neophytes, beginners, novices, newcomers. But he knew that his disciple Atreya needed to hear another side. So he wrote a letter to Atreya Rishi in October 72, which is rather famous, and it's very instructive. And the punchline is, don't expect utopia. I'll set you up for the quote. I'm going to scroll there by a little background here. So Prabhupada, in the letter, he says, "It is not so much that because there may be some fault in our godbrothers and godsisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists. No," Prabhupada is shooting that down. "It is the nature of the living condition to always have some fault." Now that is striking, because you think, well, in the spiritual world, certainly there's no faults, but Prabhupada presses the point here. "Even in the spiritual world, there is some fault and envy. Sometimes the gopis will quarrel over Krishna's favor, and once Krishna was so much attracted to Radharani that by mistake he tried to milk a bull instead of a cow. And sometimes when the gopis used to put on their dress and makeup for seeing Krishna, they would be too much hasty and smear kumkum and mascara in the wrong places, and their ornaments and dresses would appear as if small children had been trying to dress themselves. and they were not very expert like that. There are so many examples. But then Prabhupada starts to explain. But that is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna. Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, "Oh, she has done so nicely. Now let me do better for pleasing Krishna." That is envy, but it is transcendental without malice. There's the key, without malice. Transcendental envy is without ill will. It's without hate. It's without malice. With malice toward none. So Prabhupada continues. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. If you look up utopia, it's two Greek words. Utopos. No place. There's no place where everybody is completely always in harmony. It's some imagined, fairyland. Even in the spiritual sky, there's tension, there's conflict. So Prabhupada says, so we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia, rather that is impersonalism. Aha. So utopia is actually an impersonal concept. Some bland, monolithic sameness. There's no tension, there's no difference. No, there's intrigue in the spiritual world. But Krishna's the center of it. So it's transcendental. Okay, and there's no malice. So Prabhupada writes here, now here's where I'll scroll it. So people should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society, there will be utopia. Because devotees are persons. Therefore, there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that their lackings have become transcendental because despite everything they may do, their topmost intention is to serve Krishna. So Prabhupada knew that Atreya Rishi needed to hear that. And he goes on and on and on, even after this in the letter. And he finally ends the letter. Prabhupada says, the devotee is always pessimistic about the spiritual world, but he is very about the material world, The devotee is always pessimistic about the material world, Prabhupada says, but he is very optimistic about spiritual life. So in this way, you should always consider that anyone engaged in Krishna's service is always the best person. So Prabhupada, he's really getting on the case here. He's saying, look, just be like a bee. See the good. See the good qualities. Don't be like the fly who's always dwelling on the sores, the faults. And Prabhupada goes so far as to say that's what the utopians do. Here, I'll read you that part. It says, the devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that, and like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar, or the best qualities of a person. Not like the utopians, who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores or find the person, and because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without fault, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So that's really eye-opening. It's not that everything is going to be hunky-dory all the time, even in the spiritual world, but there it's different. It's a different quality of tension. It's a different quality of disagreement. It's a different quality of envy. But it's actually great news, isn't it? It's not, this bland picture you get of spiritual life. Not to unnecessarily criticize our Christian friends, but there'll be these Christian tracts we get where, what do you do all day? No, the spiritual world, it's more intense. It's more intense. There's more intense emotions. There's more intense adventures. There's more intense relationships than there are in this material world. People don't take the spiritual life in Kali Yuga often because they think the material world is more intense. It's more appealing than what they're presented as spiritual life. Spiritual life sounds a little bland. So Prabhupada's making the point here. Don't expect it. Cooperate, thesis, antithesis. Don't expect utopia. Okay, so now the next question is, all right, Srila Prabhupada, you've told me this, don't expect utopia. So what's the resolution to this tension? Okay, so let's look at the next slide. Any questions so far? I think we're doing okay with time. so far we can maybe open it up for questions, Ramananda?
Well, I never muted anybody.
Okay. So that means they're very polite, and that's great. So they know I have a big mouth. But now the big mouth will be quiet, and I will try my darndest to answer any questions or hear your comments. You can embellish what you've heard speaking so far. Anything?
Go
ahead.
This don't expect utopia. You mentioned that envy, can have a different quality, or, does that justify harsh dealings and pride, arrogance, Himalayan blunders?
Of course not. And that's not transcendental. That's the bathwater we want to wash out. Although, you read things in Nectar Devotion and other Shastras where it sounds like they're getting pretty heavy with each other. But Prabhupada's point is that the nature of transcendental envy is that, number one, the individual egos aren't the center of it. Krishna is really, really, really center of people's desires. And when somebody does something wonderful to please Krishna, there's a feeling of jealousy. But the response is, I'm going to do something even better. And this way, there's an ever-increasing spiral of desire to do something better and better for Krishna. So no, by saying transcendental competition and transcendental envy, I didn't mean to somehow justify what goes on in the name of that, or things that happen in the past or may still happen. Of course, Lord Chaitanya's movement is an open door, and as long as we're going for everybody, there's going to be a constant washing out of the dirt. It's for everybody. So that means it was constantly devotees coming in, and we're all green and then full of junk, and hopefully getting washed. And this is the key, actually, Vidagdhamadava Prabhu, to cooperation. And we're going to get into this a little more. It's based on always seeking the better association. Is that okay?
Yeah, except for I don't think it's okay to be jealous of somebody who's sincerely serving Krishna or trying to please Prabhupada. I think that's out of bounds also. I think that somebody's lacking some maturity or lacking some adhikar that would actually be jealous of somebody that actually is successful in pleasing Krishna or pleasing Srila Prabhupada.
Certainly material jealousy is destructive, both for the person who's jealous, and it could manifest in some aparad. But Prabhupada is making the point in the letter that when a person in the spiritual world is jealous, or you could say an advanced devotee, in other words, what's the spiritual response for seeing or hearing about or witnessing some wonderful service, to Krishna? The spiritual jealousy is, wow, that's great. I'm gonna do something even better. Not in a mean-spirited way of trying to tear down what that person did, but I'm going to do something even better. So there's such a thing as spiritual jealousy where you want to do something even better. So I'm just trying to somehow.
Well, I would express it differently. That somebody would be enlivened, by that, and yeah, be inspired to even surpass that. But I wouldn't call it jealousy.
Well, Prabhupada did. That's
really?
What he did. Let me read it again if you missed it. All right, let's see here. But obviously it's a different quality. Here we go. Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, "Oh, she has done so nicely. Now let me do better for pleasing Krishna." That is envy, but it is transcendental without malice. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. He also says jealous too somewhere else, but it's the same thing. Prabhupada says that's envy, but it's not. It's a spiritual kind of envy which simply enhances service to Krishna. So maybe because...
Okay, I get that. There's no malice. There's no, we're just, I get that. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. It's hard for us to relate to because we're coming from such an envy is what makes the world go round. So we should never, try to mistake our material envy and jealousy for anything spiritual. But there is such a thing as pure envy, pure jealousy, which enhances service to Krishna. Okay, I guess unless somebody's burning with a question or comment, we should go to what this slide is an attempt to start resolving the opposites. Again, the thesis, cooperate, the antithesis, don't expect utopia. There's going to be disagreements. There's going to be, look what we saw at the end of the last slide. We saw the gopis and Akrura in intense, practically battle. They were battling. But Krishna was the center of that. Okay, so I don't hear anybody piping up, so I'm going to move on. So the famous resolution, which is not easy, easier said than done, but in another letter in 1973 to another leader, Prabhupada said, what we have to do... What's that? Okay. What we have to do is find unity in diversity. Let me find the quote that's going to set this up. So, Prabhupada is explaining to a leader that, quote, material nature means dissension and disagreement, especially in Kali Yuga. But for this Krishna consciousness movement, its success will depend on agreement, even though there are varieties of engagement. In the material world, there are varieties, but there is no agreement. In the spiritual world, there are varieties, but there is agreement. That is the difference. Now, here's the quote. The materialist, without being able to adjust the varieties and the disagreements, makes everything zero. They cannot come into agreement with varieties. But if we keep Krishna in the center, then there will be agreement in varieties. This is called unity in diversity. There's a oneness, there's a unity, and there's a diversity. There's a difference. And then Prabhupada continues. I am therefore suggesting, this is extraordinary, listen to this, that all our men meet in Mayapur every year during the birth anniversary of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. With all GBC and senior men present, we should discuss how to make unity in diversity. Prabhupada went so far as to say that this unity in diversity theme should be the overriding theme of every Mayapur meeting. Now, why did he say that? Because, with his vision soaring off to the end of the millennium, he could see that if this ISKCON attempt to fulfill Mahaprabhu's Prithiviti Achiyata Nagaradi Gram in every town and village my name will be sung, is to fly, is to be sustainable, is to increase, is to last. We're talking about an international movement with people, we bring so much difference. You say variety. Variety is kind of a euphemism. We bring tons of differences in just the way we're raised, in our body language, in our mind, our language, our culture, and our prarabdha karmas. We bring so much difference. We're going to have to be able to find our unity in our diversity. And by that, Prabhupada means that within the parameters of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra and the path chalked out by previous acharyas, we're going to have to see that Lord Chaitanya's mission is being served in different ways. Because different countries, different methods, we're going to have to see how the eternal unchangeable principles are served and how the details can be adjusted according to time, country, and candidate. And now I'm sort of getting ahead of myself because, or maybe that's just a transition into the next slide, because that's a big challenge for us. To find the unity and diversity, we need to distinguish between principles and details, because most of our tensions in our attempt to serve Krishna in the Hare Krishna movement are over just this very thing. And to illustrate this, we're going to select another anecdote from Srila Kirti Prabhu, who put in the most time, actually, with as being Prabhupada's personal servant, even more than Hari Shari Prabhu, who was still coming out with his Transcendental Diary volumes. But Srila actually logged more servant hours, so he has a lot to share. And let's see if I can set this one up here. Yes, the year is 1972. Prabhupada has recently broken ground in Mayapur for a temple, not the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium, but the Mayapur Chandrodaya Mandir. He invited a lot of godbrothers to come. Many of them did come. And now he's moved on. That was back in the spring, and now it's October. It's later in 72, and Srila and Prabhupada are in the Philippines. And they arrive in October, and then they set up, and then the next day, while Prabhupada is being massaged by Srila reports in his book that while I was rubbing the mustard oil on his back, Srila Prabhupada said, and this is just out of the blue, "My godbrothers criticize me that I have allowed women to live in our temples. This is not done in India, but I have become successful because I have made this adjustment." He then became quiet. Finally, I said, so this was out of the blue. Srila is massaging Prabhupada, and this is on Prabhupada's mind. And as soon as Prabhupada said that he made this adjustment, now think about that. I mean, traditionally, the godbrothers were right. You don't do this. You don't put men and women together in the same space. Shastra says a man is like a butter pot, the woman is like fire, and you put the fire near the butter pot, it's going to melt, you're going to have problems. And there were problems. And Prabhupada took that risk for the sake of spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. And there were a lot of casualties, etc. But Prabhupada went so far as to say that because he says, I have become successful because I made this adjustment. Then he became quiet. And that started Srila wheels spinning. And it took him a while to formulate a question. But this is the question he asked. Prabhupada, how can we tell the difference between making an adjustment and changing a principle? Prabhupada closed his eyes, and I continued to rub his body. Finally, he opened his eyes and responded. That requires a little intelligence. And whenever I present this, I always hasten to add that for me, this is the understatement of all time. A little intelligence. I mean, even very exalted souls, Prabhupada's godbrothers, they didn't see how this was key for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world. As Prabhupada said later in other places too, what am I going to do? Traditionally, okay, they're right. But people in the modern, the so-called developed world, they're educated the same way, the men and the women. If I just only allowed the men to come at these, fledgling centers, then what are the women going to do? They won't be able to come. I have to give everybody a chance to learn Krishna consciousness. So interestingly enough, in the room in Manila, in the Philippines, on October 12, 72, when this exchange took place, there was another devotee in the room. And he wrote a book later about his times with Prabhupada. The book is called My Glorious Master. It's our ISKCON educator, Borijan Prabhu, who was a witness to this exchange. And Borijan comments in his book, Srila question was penetrating, clearly delineating between the adjustable and the non-adjustable, between a detail and a principle, is not easy. It requires intelligence. And so then Borijan wrote, to foolishly mistake a non-adjustable principle for an adjustable detail will cause havoc in spiritual life, and to accept each detail as if it can never be adjusted is fanaticism. Fanaticism will cause havoc of a different nature. So, and then later on in the book, Borijan goes on to say, if we have developed our spiritual intelligence, we can make distinctions between principles and details. But we should confirm our opinions with trusted friends or superiors. We should not act independently. So there, Prabhu's in a nutshell, is a great caveat, is a great warning from Borijan, because whether you're a brand new devotee or maybe you've reached the point in your spiritual life where you're actually giving people shelter, you're giving diksha and shiksha. As soon as a devotee, however great the devotee may be, or however neophyte the devotee may be, if that devotee isolates himself, that is the big killer. That's when we start to live in our own minds, and we always have to check ourselves against our peers. Because on our own, we get weird. And everybody needs to be encouraged, and everybody needs to be called out sometimes, from the highest to the lowest. So on principles and details, this is a big challenge to cooperation. And how do we further please our Founder-Acarya by cooperating? Well, there's a big hint from our Rasacharya, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who was the most expert, Prabhupada told us, at relishing the mellows of devotional service. One big key to not getting weird and not becoming isolated and not imagining so many things is the next slide. Let's see here. Okay, so there's Rupa Goswami in the slide, writing with looks like a quill pen, something very simple. Here he wrote on palm leaves. It looks a little plumb, a little square to be a palm leaf, but I won't second guess the artist there. There in the background is a young lady. It reminds me of the whole pastime of Radharani bringing all kinds of ingredients for Rupa to cook a nice birthday feast for Rupa's elder brother Sanatan Goswami. And then Sanatan called him out and said, "Oh no, that's where you got those ingredients? For Radharani, you've done a great blunder. Oh no." So anyway, be that as it may, in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami gives us so much help about how to keep progressing, keep moving in the Hare Krishna movement toward Krishna's lotus feet. And of the 64 principles that he outlines for practicing devotional service, 5 are considered to be the most important. So maybe I'll invite people to name the 5. Anyone? Ramananda, you want?
Just trying to unmute here. I'll throw in one, hearing the Bhagavatam.
Hearing the Bhagavatam, yes. Bingo.
Residing in the holy place?
Residing in the holy place, yes. Number 2.
Chanting the holy name.
Yes, Vidagnamadava. Number 3. We have 3 winners. There's 2 left.
Worshipping the
Number 4, deity worship.
Worshipping the deity. And by Chris's arrangement, we've saved the best for last, and this is the one that saves us. And very often we don't even get all of it completely right. So who can name the final one?
Association.
Say it again.
Association with the devotees.
Yes. Prabhu, where are you calling from? Where are you listening from?
I'm from Elmsford, Newark, Prabhu.
Where is that?
It's in Newark.
Oh, Newark.
Yeah.
Newark, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Newark. So in rapid American English speech, we say Newark. Okay. Very good. So association, and that's how we usually say it, right? Association with devotees. Rupa says it in another way. Look at this. Here's how, and this is where we really get a cold shower. Here it is. Associate with like-minded devotees. Okay, here's how Rupa says it. One must associate with like-minded Vaishnavas who are pure, more elevated, and realized. Now that's a challenge. That means I got to step out of my comfort zone. 1976 was the year that Prabhupada last visited New Dwarka, and I was serving at the BBT with my roommate, Devamrita Brahmachari. He was the proofreader, I was the indexer. And Prabhupada spent 10 days, maybe Vidagdavadava, Prabhu, were you there? 10 days? Were you there in June 76?
Where is this?
June 76, Prabhupada's last visit to New Dwarka. Were you there?
I'm sorry, I wasn't. No, very sad.
Okay. Yeah, that was, we didn't know it, but that was Prabhupada's last visit to New Dwarka. So Prabhupada had been in New Dwarka. He was there from, I think, the 2nd to the 11th, or the 1st to the 11th. So after about a week of Prabhupada being there, and so many things happened. Prabhupada smashed the Sahajya weed in his movement, and Yadavar showed him his new movie, Spiritual Frontier from New Vrindavan, and morning walks, intense morning walk. So after about a week, I turned to Devamrita, my roommate, and I said, "Hey, Devam, Prabhupada's been here a whole week. It's so blissful. I don't know how much longer I can take it." So that was a very telling remark, because as blissful as it was being in Prabhupada's association, and I wasn't even living in the same quarters with him. I mean, what to speak of, who was the servant then? Harishari was his servant at that point. But just by Prabhupada being in the same neighborhood around Venice and Watsika, we were all forced to live at a pitch of Krishna consciousness that we weren't used to living at. And it was challenging our comfort zones. And we'd only see Prabhupada, once or twice, maybe 3 times a day. Say you got to go on the morning walk. Say a song, give Bhagavatam. And then in the evening, there might be some program, like Yadavar showed him his Spiritual Frontier movie. So at most, you'd see maybe thrice in the day. But you were challenged because you had to live at a level of consciousness that Krishna really had to be the center. Just like I'm sure you experienced that in Volcano over the 4th of July, right? When you're pulling those ropes and Jagannath's the center, it's blissful, but it's challenging because he really is the center, and you really have to, your senses, mind, intelligence, your working senses, your knowledge acquiring senses, you're just all there saying Jai Jagannath, and it's not just a show to make it all work. So Rupa Goswami says we have to associate with like-minded Vaishnavas. He never says, he didn't mean, it means you hang with your friends and you reinforce each other's anarthas, and you just sort of stay in the same place, round and round, with the anchor of material attachment dragging you around in a circle, like the old wedding party story that Siddhanta Saraswati used to tell. No, he's saying, look, you must associate with devotees who are pure, more elevated, and realized, and that's how we're going to advance. When I got my little BA at HPU, Hawaii Pacific, in teaching English as a second language, one of the principles of teaching English as a second language was to always challenge your students, that they always have to be, reinforcing, of course, what they've learned, but always bringing them to the next level. So that's how we advance. Or like weightlifters, right? You always got to pump a little more iron to get more advanced in weightlifting. So that same principle is there in association, and that principle is what actually enables us to do many things in devotional service. And one of them is to navigate the ocean of devotion in the association of devotees in the Hare Krishna movement who are so different. We're all so different. Sometimes we joke. I know we used to joke anyway when we were all living together, back in the day, that, boy, we're so different. I can't imagine living with these people, a standard joke, in this temple doing this activity unless, Prabhupada wanted it, blah, 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 like that. So a key to navigating Prabhupada's mission is to do this, is to associate with like-minded devotees and to also do this. And I'm going to read a little something now from a nice piece that Satsuru Maharaj wrote way back in 1990 in a book called Prabhupada Meditation. And it's connecting with the whole idea of finding our mission within the mission, because when we do really find our best contribution to Prabhupada's mission, and of course that will evolve and change over time, but when we do that, then we find our people, so to speak, in the movement who are doing that same kind of thing, whether it's pursuing varnashram communities or distributing books or improving the deity worship in the movement, or doing business for Krishna. It's natural. By our nature, we're going to associate with those kinds of people. So back in 1990, Satsur Maharaj wrote a nice piece about finding our unity in our diversity and associating with like-minded devotees. And he wrote this. He says, this is from a book called Prabhupada Meditations, and he says, by taking up the service of Srila Prabhupada, which most attracts our heart and to which we feel we can give our greatest efforts, we will enter into association with devotees who are like us. A certain group will gather up from Prabhupada's writings all he has said about living on farms, and they will feel nourished by those instructions while they work on a farm to carry on cow protection and ox power. They will live in a kind of trance of conviction that they are carrying out Prabhupada's most important mission. What about those who are distributing his books? Are they opposed to the varnashram servants? No, although sometimes in the rhetoric of the party spirit, devotees may sound like that. Let us not be agitated by the party spirit, in other words, firing each other up about our service, and neither be discouraged. Let everyone come together, at least sometimes, and appreciate Prabhupada as the universal teacher. Let's all draw the same conclusion from his life and teachings, that he is our inspiration, and that this is expressed in many ways. Unity in diversity. And that's a big, big key to cooperation. So it's getting on to the half hour. I think I'm going to just summarize what we've looked at so far and open it up. We've looked at how love means to serve and love means to cooperate. We've been cautioned by Prabhupada that Krishna consciousness, serving Krishna, is in utopia, that we're all going to always agree. Despite that, Prabhupada says we do have to find our unity overall amid all our diversity. And then we have to do that, we have to somehow get past the impasse that we often find ourselves in, where we can't agree on what's the principle and what's the detail. We have to come together, put our minds and hearts together on that, and impute the best motives to each other, and not think that just because this person disagrees with me, that means this person must be insincere or dumb, or, we have to come together in goodwill and in any given time, place, and circumstance, distinguish a principle from a detail. And to really serve cooperatively in Prabhupada's mission, we ultimately have to find people who are like-minded, who are attracted to a similar aspect of the mission. That doesn't mean just that, but we have to find devotees who can help us make our best contribution to the mission, and who are mature and secure enough that they can, even if they're doing something different in the mission, they can appreciate what we're doing, and we can appreciate what they're doing. So that's kind of the summary of the lesson. To love is to cooperate. And now, Ramananda Prabhu, we can have more Q&A and more comments to
Suresh Prabhu.
Yes, Vidantamato.
Can you, I see the reference here, Srila Rupa Goswami, Bhakti Smriti Sindhu. Looks like the verses are given here, maybe Bhanu Maharaj's book. Do you know where that is in Prabhupada's summary study? That reference?
No, I didn't check that, but I can read you a little more from.
I just need to know the chapter. I need to know the chapter.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have the book in front of me, but when it talks about, I think it might be in further consideration of devotional principles. But let me just read you one. I'm glad you brought this up, because Rupa Goswami, when he mentions this, he says it's in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. As you say, this must have been translated by Bhanu Maharaj. I think he's the only one in our movement that's done that. He says, Rupa says, earlier I enumerated these 5 types of devotional activities. So Rupa is saying, look, I mentioned this earlier, these 5 things, how important they are. Then he says, still I mention them once again only to reiterate their importance and superiority over other devotional processes. So he's saying this is so important, these 5 things. And you couple that with Prabhupada's reminder that, associating with devotees is practically 80-90%. He would say these super high percentages of how do we advance in Krishna consciousness. And we see how important it is to associate with like-minded devotees who are going to help us make our best contribution to the mission. I'd have to go back. Maybe if you email me, or maybe you can find it in Nectar Devotion. But Prabhupada does isolate that. I don't even know if in Nectar Devotion, his summary treatment of Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, if he gets into the details.
This is a quote I lost track of, and I really, 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 really want to find it. I fully agree with you. This is an extremely important quote by Rupa Goswami, and it is in Prabhupada's books, and I have lost track of where that is. And so my humble suggestion is that you update it when you do find it and put it, reference Prabhupada's summary rather than another book.
Okay, that's a good idea. All right, ref, or like-minded. Okay, thank you.
Hello. You said so many things which warrant comments and questions on my mind, and I've been trying to figure out how am I going to, present one question to cover all these things. And are you with me there?
Here's what you can do. You can ask me one question now, and then email me all the others, and we can have a dialogue.
No, I thought I was interfering with someone else's trying to ask some questions. What I'm trying to say. Anyway, my question, because one thing that you did say that really strikes me in my mind is on this point of fanaticism, how it creates different anxieties. Now, there are lots of splinter groups that have developed since the days that Prabhupada left, and there are also lots of other groups with controversial ideas in terms of principles. Now, how do we cooperate in that kind of an area without being fanatical?
How do we cooperate?
With splinter groups and with groups that have different philosophical ideas or conclusions, without being fanatical. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
How do we cooperate amongst ourselves or with other groups?
With other groups, because they're splinters.
Oh, okay.
They're usually Prabhupada.
Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
We find our common interests. Yeah. We just we have Prabhupada's Vani as our measure of everything we see, read, hear, experience. And so if somebody has a different emphasis, that's fine. We're not fanatics. We don't say Prabhupada's the way, the light, the truth. No one cometh unto Krishna except by our Founder-Acarya. We don't say that. But we do say that.
I'm talking about other, Vaishnava groups. I don't talk about other religious, approaches or sayings. I'm talking about other groups of devotees who have taken initiation, for example, within ISKCON, but they have a different philosophical attitude of what Srila Prabhupada is trying to teach us and what, he is allowing us and not allowing us to do.
Mm-hmm. Well, Prabhupada knew that we would have our differences, so he encouraged us to stay together. He did not encourage us to, as you say, splinter. He would use that word too, splinter or break off or go away. Or it's natural because we're individuals. We're bringing different levels of consciousness to the hearing process, so we're going to have different understandings. But Prabhupada didn't want us to leave and go away in a huff despite this. So that's one thing. That's internal. As far as cooperating with people outside Prabhupada's Sangha, then we just have to find points of common interest. Because different Sanghas have different emphases and different moods, and that's fine. It's not that the Hare Krishna movement has a monopoly on, Krishna's attention. Krishna is the only one who can relate to everybody. Right? He's a Kila Rasamrita Sindhu. He's the reservoir of all rasas. all relationships. I'm a tiny guy who can only relate to a certain range of people, and I'm trying to mature and advance and get it together and cooperate. And so even in the spiritual world, my gosh, what do we hear just Prabhupada say? Not everybody gets along. So they have their different groups. There's left-wing gopis, there's right-wing gopis. My God, there's even left and right in the spiritual world. But the difference, Prabhupada reminded us, is there's no envy. There's no material envy. There's no hate. There's no malice. There's no tearing down the other just because they please Krishna. So it's not a wonder that we have so much diversity and that we have, disagreements. At least amongst ourselves, we have to really get to know. Sometimes our disagreements are just about because we don't really know Prabhupada. We think Prabhupada's like this, but we haven't gone deeply into his body, into his life, his teachings, his mood, his mission, and try to apply it. When you go really deep, then it might challenge your, it challenges our attachments. It challenges our bodily conceptions, like that. So maybe we can talk about this more on the email. I mean, it's an unlimited topic.
I agree. It is unlimited, and it becomes a quagmire. The thing is, the tendency is to fall into a quagmire when we talk about these kind of things, just because it is really, really complicated.
Well, here's what saves me from falling into a quagmire. I've been in quagmires my whole life, and I like to think I'm not in one now, although I know I'm really neophyte. I really need to learn a lot. But I'm not, at least I'm feeling enthused. It's because if we find our mission within the mission, then even if there's differences, we're kind of secure in our own contribution. Sometimes we just get discouraged because we really haven't hit our stride. We don't know who we are. What's my mission is the mission. But if we're mature and secure in our own mission within the mission, then we can handle all these differences and things that come up and disappointments. And look at Prabhupada. I mean, my God, he had, from the external point of view, he had lots of cause to be discouraged by what happened to his Guru Maharaj's mission, by not getting any help. He had Krishna, and he had his Guru Maharaj's order, but other than that, he had nothing, so he had a lot of cause for discouragement. But he was really fired up. By the time the 1960s came on, he was openly telling everybody, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to America. I'm going to go to the West. My Guru Maharaj wants it. And he didn't have any support. He didn't have any money. He was hardly eating right, torn cloth, still writing and publishing these books. Unstoppable determination because Krishna was helping him. He had Krishna. So sometimes it's all about just me getting my own steam together so I can see the good. If I don't have my own steam together, then maybe I'll just tend to find fault because I can't face the faults inside me. That's a big thing. So please, if you want, you can drop me a line. We can talk about it some more. Or other questions? You said you had so many questions.
Well, I think that one question about how to reconcile that there are these differences are going to be there, and even though I may not fully agree with what these differences are all about, still I'm obliged to cooperate with them. And just how to make that a reality is the real point.
Well, small is beautiful. If you think in terms of the whole mission, it's mind-boggling. But if you just think in terms of, what is it? They say think globally, act locally. So if you can at least be enthused about what's going on in your own, service, your own mission within the mission, then you'll have a brighter outlook on the bigger mission.
I agree 100% on that last one.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much.
I have just a suggestion, and that is that the issue of how we relate to other sanghas outside of ISKCON is really a complex issue, and just a suggestion that maybe you keep the focus and the scope of your seminar more or less limited to ISKCON and establishing Prabhupada as the Founder-Acarya within our own society. And because it could get really complicated if you start going outside, okay, now how does ISKCON relate to others? I don't know, I think maybe you might not want to go there too much in this seminar. That's my thought, because we really got to get our own house in order, and I think that's what my understanding, Sureshwarji, of your mission is. We got to get Prabhupada back front and center so that for the next 10,000 years, all the followers within ISKCON, I mean, I think this is what this is all about, our ISKCON society, is establishing Prabhupada's position, which is obviously kind of slipped off of front and center. And if that's not reestablished, it could be, could be disastrous. And one other comment, I wanted to applaud you on your use of that one slide of Acarya, taking Krishna away and all the gopis. I think if one thing from today's talk is really going to stick in my brain, it's how you elucidated that concept of diversity, and that being real and that being spiritual, and not necessarily a bad thing, but a good thing and a reality. And that was a great slide. It's really the way you spoke on it. It's just, I think it's forever going to stick in my brain. That was great.
It's extraordinary, isn't it? There's pure devotees fighting. I mean, they're really going at it.
No, that's the visual. The visual along with your transcendental words is really powerful. And I had my hair standing on end as you were describing us, and goosebumps. That was really great.
But as Vedanta Madhava Prabhu reminded us, we should never mistake our ego clashes with what's going on between, Acarya and the gopis.
Right.
It's not about, So yeah, it's all. You're right. It's a good reminder that when Prabhu asked that question, I kind of did forget my my guideline, my own self guideline that this seminar, because our relationship with Prabhupada relates to everything practically in our Krishna consciousness. The tendency is to want to talk about so many things. We really have to just keep the focus on strengthening our relationship with our Founder-Acarya. And what Prabhu just mentioned about how to relate to other sanghas, that's a whole other seminar. That's a seminar, So
that's what I was thinking. Your answer was perfect when you said, find the common interest. And then I wouldn't go any further than that. I'd just keep your focus.
Mm-hmm. And before we can find a common interest, but first I got to get it together and find my service, right?
Yeah.
And I can relate. Okay.
Go ahead, Mother Kanta.
I just have some input on Vedanta Madhava's question about the nectar of devotion. 40 in Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, where he lists, this is at the end of chapter 6, he lists the 64 items of devotional service. Number 43, associate with devotees who are considered more advanced. And then that compares to Bhanu Maharaj's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where number 42 is associate with like-minded, affectionate, superior devotees.
Yeah, well, don't forget, when Bhanu Maharaj is translating VRS, he's doing it verse for verse, and Prabhupada is giving a summary. So when in connection with summary study, Prabhupada once remarked, summary study means I can do what I want, to which the devotees laughed. So I think essentially it's the same thing, although you see, you just get more detail there, in the Sanskrit from Rupa, what he means. But it means always being challenged to serve and associate with devotees who are closer to Krishna than I am. And that's going to really challenge my false ego, because my false ego wants to always put myself in the center, and advanced devotees don't do that. Krishna's always the center, and that's good for me. So thank you for that reference. So I guess that's it, huh? That's the reference?
No, it isn't. That's just in the 64. Prabhupada actually gets into this somewhere in his books. I read it many years ago, and I cannot find it. And he says, and I'll just paraphrase it for you, that one should associate with like-minded devotees and discuss the philosophy of Krishna consciousness threadbare. And in this way, his faith will wax strong, and he'll make advancement in Krishna consciousness. And this is such an important statement, and I have lost track of where this is. I thought it was in Teachings of Lord Chaitanya, but maybe it is in Nectar of Devotion. But I need to find this. It's very important to me to find this.
Well, if you really remember those, I mean, you said a lot of key words there.
Right, and I haven't been able to find it in the database, but I don't have access to it on a daily basis either.
Well, I just downloaded a new version too. I'm gonna. So what you said, threadbare? What else did you say?
Well, one should just the keywords are just make it simple. Like-minded devotees is definitely there. That one should discuss the philosophy is definitely there. And faith is definitely there, and it only makes sense if we bang heads with people that have a different angle of vision. It's only going to make us weaker.
Yeah.
So we get around devotees that we get enlivened, and we're on the same, we all have natures. We can't deny that. Irmala does that in her classes. We all have natures. So we get around other devotees that we resonate with, and we become stronger devotees. If we fight all the time, we're just weakening ourselves.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So, thank you. This has been. I'm definitely going to add that reference in as an echo of Rupa Goswami there. Once I find that, I'm going to look for it anyway.
One last thing, since it was a beautiful, the part of it I heard that you did today, I liked it. Srila Maharaj deals with the same thing that Trudakirti brought up, the adjustment and the principle under the heading of the relative and the absolute. So sometimes Srila Prabhupada in his dealings and in his instructions, he might be dealing with time and circumstance or a particular disciple. And at other times, he's declaring broad principles that are to be followed at all times and in all places. Right. And so that's, that's what we need the intelligence to discern what that is. And one of those principles, was that Prabhupada didn't want the whole, centralized management system. He didn't want that. And that's causing a lot of the problems holding back the diversity of the movement.
Well, that's exactly why he said in this letter that I read that you should meet in Mayapur and discuss how we can have unity and diversity, because he definitely did want an ultimate managing authority to oversee the whole thing, but he also wanted local empowerment. So it's constant, oneness and difference, this tension, this unity and diversity, which Prabhupada knew was the key to the whole thing being successful for the long term.
Right.
You're right. Yeah. Not easy, huh? It only happens with Krishna consciousness. Okay, let me just read the transition to the next lesson, because it's getting late. So the transition from the love is to cooperate to the next lesson, which is called Fictional Prabhupada. As there are many ways to serve Srila Prabhupada, there are also many ways to know him. To know him is to love him. But some ways of knowing Srila Prabhupada are illusory, incomplete, or just plain wrong. Before we look at some authentic ways we can each know and love our Srila Prabhupada, in the next lesson we'll clear up some lingering misconceptions we may have about our Founder-Acarya. So we're going to try to basically exorcise some ghosts, impersonal ghosts and sentimental ghosts. And once we do that, then we'll really authentically be able to enter into our Srila Prabhupada. So thank you very much, Prabhupada. I really do invite your emails or feedback, because we do have limited time tonight, but I felt better about the technology today and about my own mood. So thank you, Ramananda Prabhu.
All right, can I have a 30-second soundbite?
Sure.
Okay, because there's no time to build the argument. I'll just throw this out. I was thinking that I would be more comfortable with a different title for your for this section. You're probably not going to take this, but anyway, I'm just throwing it out. I think that more than love and cooperation, I think it would be more appropriate to say respect and cooperation. Respect in the sense of appreciation, because we're talking about people, all of us that are trying to advance in Krishna consciousness. I mean, love is something that a Mahabhagavata has attained. And to say, just to put a word like love, we're trying to cooperate, we're trying to advance, but we can certainly appreciate and respect each other. So I just think that's a much more appropriate word. Anyway, take for whatever it's worth. Anyway, I just think that's a lot easier to, it's more appropriate.
Sure. I mean, that's where it begins, and that's where we're at, to begin at the beginning. I'm trying to follow a certain flow. Go ahead.
I personally find that when devotees, especially when they'll have this thing, they'll say, where's the love and trust? Usually the devotees that say that are the ones that are the most critical and just vehement, in their relationship with other devotees, but they always say, where's the love and trust? So I don't know, I just have this thing, as soon as I hear that, I go, ah. But certainly it's attainable to have respect and appreciation, because that's what Rupa Goswami talked about, Krishna iti yasha giritam manasa etc. That verse. Love is a long way off.
Yes, but that is what you mentioned, respect. That's an item of love, as Prabhupada mentioned to Cardinal Daniel when they were going at it back and forth about cow killing in France in 1973. You hear the cardinal say, "You mean you should not kill the animals? We have love of God?" And Prabhupada said, "Yes, not kill is one item of love." So Prabhupada is, begin at the beginning, as you're suggesting. To not kill, to not be violent or disrespectful or pig-headed, however you want to put it. In the context of the seminar, we're going from Sambandha, which is knowledge of a relationship, to Abhideya, to acting more in the relationship, to Prayojana. So we're allowed to say love, although, as you're reminding us, it's a challenge, but we can still put the L word out there as the target. Yeah, we do want to love, and maybe I have to start by just being civilized, but that's an item of love. So I'm going to stick by my guns with the love, but I also I appreciate the reminder that let's start where we are too.
One short soundbite.
Sure.
Srila Sridhar Maharishi would adjust. If you can't adjust with a devotee, you can pay your respects at a distance.
Mm-hmm.
Gave us that expression.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you don't go to war.
Right. That's Rupa Goswami. I think that's the verse Ramananda started to quote. You behave differently toward different kinds of devotees. Sure. Okay, Prabhu.
If I could do one short soundbite in support of the term love, and then you can cut it loose. Just my thought off the cuff in that little brief discussion we had, that I think that all of us have experienced some real affection for perhaps very few, but I think we probably experience some real affection for various devotees within our society, and I don't think it would be wrong to call it love. It's certainly not prema, and it's certainly not the highest pure stage, but just like a mango, we always give the example, a green mango is a mango nonetheless, albeit quite green and not in its full sweetness and full of juice, but it's definitely a mango. And I'll cite the example, I hope it's okay, of my relationship with Sureshwar. We have a really close, sweet, wonderful relationship. I miss him terribly, and I think that it's a very immature, but real love. I think it's there. That I feel that affection more than any family member. Family members may have been more intense in one sense, but I think that some of us are beginning to taste some real sweetness in our relationships with our real like-minded God brothers and God sisters, where we're helping one another to grow in spiritual life and we're revealing our minds and revealing our hearts. I don't think it's wrong to call that love.
Jai, I love you, Narahari.
I love you, Prabhuji. I miss you terribly. Thank God we have you on Skype.
But look, the mango is perfect. This is Prabhupada's example. When the mango is so green, it's a mango, but it's bitter, right? So in our dealings, if we're so green, sometimes they can be bitter, but still we're aspiring devotees, and that's why Prabhupada would always stick up for us, when we make these silly blunders, And then it gets sweeter, and then finally when we're ripe and mature, you can actually taste what a real mango is. But as you say, it's not wrong, just as it's not wrong to say a mango is a mango even when it's green. So we can talk about love even when we're not fully tasting it, because we're on the way. And respect is certainly an item, and not killing is certainly an item. And we'll get there by Prabhupada's mercy. All right, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Jai.
Thank you,
Thank you for the class.
Jai.
Jai. Jai.